Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Has the bedroom reconnect ion between Claire and Kyle failed? According to spoilers for The Young and the Restless, Kyle Abbott's and Claire Newman's bedroom reunion could not work out. When Claire applies the brakes to Kyle in private, will Audra Charles win? For what seemed like an eternity, Kyle was stranded in France with no means of communication with Claire. Claire, meantime, is still attempting to understand what life is like without her father after being crushed by the death of Cole Howard. It appears that Kyle and Claire haven't had a bedroom reunion since he returned from Nice because they have also had to cope with all of this Audra turmoil. Given everything Claire has been through, it's likely that Kyle hasn't wanted to put any pressure on her. But according to Y&R spoilers, Claire and Kyle will eventually want to take that bold move. After all the chaos, Kyle and Claire might attempt to reconnect and become intimate if they have some alone time. Kyle might use this as an opportunity to separate Claire from Audra and block out the sounds. Maybe Kyle will see this as the ideal chance to let Claire know how much he loves her and to silence Audra. Unfortunately, if Audra has been able to successfully enter Claire's mind, there might be a problem. It's simple to see Claire recalling all that Audra had said about Kyle wanting her instead. In the middle of their bedroom reunion, Claire might lose it and tell Kyle to stop. Claire may even want to pose some challenging questions regarding what actually transpired in Audra's sleeping van at this point. Claire may end her own romantic encounter with Kyle and begin to inquire about the status of her relationship with Audra. Will Kyle acknowledge that he made out with Audra and ended up half naked on top of her in bed? In any case, the misgivings Audra sowed could make Kyle and Claire's bedroom reunion less successful. If Audra destroys Claire and Kyle, she might triumph, but it might not last long if Claire goes ahead and destroys Audra and Nate Hastings' relationship. Claire Newman's life had been a whirlwind since the day she set foot in Genoa City. Losing her father, Cole Howard, so soon after reconnecting had left her heart heavier than she could have imagined. The grief wasn't just about losing a parent, it was about losing a chance. All those years she could have had with him were stolen, and now there was no more time to make new memories. That sense of unfinished business had seeped into every part of her life, including her relationship with Kyle Abbott. And while Kyle had been painfully patient since his return from France, the truth was that both of them had been quietly aching for the intimacy they hadn't shared in far too long. But Y&R spoilers suggest that just when they finally get that rare moment alone, the night might not end the way either of them expects. Kyle had been through his own personal storm. Being stranded in France with no way to contact Claire had left him frustrated and guilt-ridden. He'd imagined countless scenarios in his mind where she thought he'd abandoned her, and those fears gnawed at him on sleepless nights. By the time he returned to Genoa City, all he wanted was to wrap his arms around Claire and make up for every missed second. But life in this town rarely allows for uninterrupted reunions, especially when Audra Charles is involved. Audra had always been trouble in Kyle's life, a mix of temptation, manipulation, and chaos dressed up in designer heels. She knew how to get under his skin and play the long game, and if she couldn't have him, she'd settle for making sure Claire couldn't either. Claire wasn't blind to it. She knew Audra's agenda was more than just professional rivalry, it was personal. Since Kyle had returned from Nice, there'd been this unspoken distance between him and Claire. On the surface, they were fine, still affectionate, still talking about a future together, but something had been missing. And deep down, they both knew what it was. They hadn't been intimate since his return, and the longer that gap stretched, the more tension it built. Now, finally, the stars seemed to align. The Abbott house was quiet. No phone calls, no family drama bleeding into the evening, no surprise visitors. Kyle had lit a couple of candles in his bedroom, not because he thought it would be romantic in a movie cliché way, but because he wanted to show Claire that he'd thought about her comfort. He wanted the night to be about her. About them. Claire stepped into the room, her soft sweater slipping off her shoulder as she gave him a small, almost shy smile. For a moment, it felt like everything else had fallen away. No Audra. No grief. No secrets. Just the two of them. But Audra's voice lingered in the back of Claire's mind like a stubborn echo. The words she had whispered in that cutting, knowing tone. You know Kyle can't stay away from me. He never has. France wasn't as innocent as his letting you believe. Claire had brushed it off at first, told herself Audra was playing her usual mind games. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized there were blanks in Kyle's story about what happened overseas. And those blanks weren't just innocent omissions, they were suspicious gaps. Kyle moved closer, his hands brushing her arms, and Claire felt the magnetic connection she had with him since day one. She wanted this. She wanted him. But as his lips found hers, another image flashed in her mind: Kyle in Audra's orbit, their history heavy in the air, the way Audra always looked at him like she already knew the ending to a story Claire hadn't even finished reading. Her heartbeat picked up, but not for the reasons Kyle thought. She pulled back suddenly, her breath shaky. "What's wrong?" Kyle asked, confusion furrowing his brow. Claire searched his eyes for the truth, as if she could spot a lie hiding somewhere deep inside. What really happened in France? Kyle froze. The shift from passion to interrogation was sharp, and he knew instantly where this was coming from. "We've been over this. I told you." "You told me the safe version," Claire cut in, her voice firmer now. "But Audra keeps implying there's more. That something happened between you two." Kyle ran a hand through his hair, already irritated. "Of course she's implying that. She lives to stir things up. She wants you to doubt me because it's the only card she has left to play." Claire stepped back, crossing her arms. "So nothing happened? You weren't with her in a compromising situation?" Kyle hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Claire to notice. "We ended up in the same sleeping car one night. It wasn't planned. We talked. It got a little physical. But I stopped it." "A little physical." Claire's voice broke slightly, the sting of betrayal cutting through her composure. "What does that mean, Kyle?" His jaw tightened. "It means we kissed. She was on the bed. I was half-dressed. But I swear to you, Claire, it didn't go any further. I didn't want it to." Claire's mind raced. The image was already burned into her thoughts. Kyle on top of Audra, their past flaring up in a moment of weakness. It didn't matter if it had gone further or not, the damage was done. The candles flickered in the silence between them. What had started as a night to reconnect now felt like a confrontation neither of them had been ready for. Claire turned away, blinking back the sting in her eyes. Kyle stepped toward her. "Claire, please. You have to know I'm here with you. You're the one I love." She shook her head, struggling to find the right words. I can't pretend I'm okay with this right now. You say it didn't mean anything, but Audra's been in my head for weeks. And now I know she wasn't making it all up." Kyle's frustration boiled over. "So what? You're going to let her win? You're going to let her come between us?" Claire looked at him, her voice quieter but sharper than before. "She didn't come between us, Kyle. You did, when you let that happen in France." The air between them was thick with hurt and tension. Whatever momentum they'd had was gone, replaced with a wall neither of them could break down in this moment. Claire grabbed her sweater from the chair and slipped it back on, her body language closing off. "I need some time," she said finally, her voice low. I can't just jump into bed with you and pretend this didn't happen." Kyle's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to fight for this, but he could see the resolve in her eyes. She wasn't going to be swayed tonight. As she left the room, Kyle felt the weight of the night settle on his shoulders. Audra had managed to plant the seed of doubt, and now it had grown into something real, something dangerous. But if Audra thought this was the end, she was wrong. Kyle wasn't about to lose Claire without a fight. And Claire, for her part, wasn't about to let Audra walk away unscathed either. Because if Audra had made it her mission to destroy what Claire had with Kyle, then Claire was more than ready to turn the tables, and the first step might be going after Audra's fragile romance with Nate Hastings. Y&R fans can expect this to be the spark for a much bigger war, one that could see alliances shift, secrets weaponized, and the lines between love and revenge blurred beyond recognition. In Genoa City, relationships are fragile things, and tonight had proven just how quickly they could crack. For now, Claire walked away from Kyle's bedroom with her head high, but inside, the battle was only beginning. Claire's heels clicked against the polished Abbott hardwood as she walked toward the front door, each step sharper than the last. She didn't slam the door when she left, but the quiet finality of it hit Kyle harder than any loud argument could have. Upstairs, Kyle stood still in the center of his room, staring at the flickering candles like they were mocking him. This night was supposed to be about them, about reconnecting, about pushing past the distance. Instead, it had become another casualty in the never-ending war of manipulation Audra Charles seemed to thrive on. He extinguished the candles one by one, jaw clenched, his mind replaying the brief hesitation that had betrayed him earlier. He should have been honest from the start. He should have told Claire everything before Audra ever had the chance to spin it. Now, the truth had been dragged out under the worst circumstances, making it sound worse than it was. But Kyle knew one thing for sure: Audra wasn't going to walk away from this without paying a price. Claire's anger finds a target. Claire didn't go straight home. Instead, she drove aimlessly for a while, letting the city lights blur past her as her thoughts tangled into a tight knot. She was furious at Kyle, but underneath that anger was something more volatile: humiliation. Audra had been baiting her for weeks, and Claire had brushed it off like she was above it. Now she realized she'd been walking straight into a trap. Audra had wanted this exact reaction to plant a seed of mistrust, then watch it bloom in the worst possible moment. But Claire wasn't going to crumble. If Audra thought she'd won, she was about to find out that pushing Claire too far was a mistake. Because Claire had something Audra didn't: patience and precision. Where Audra struck fast and messy, Claire preferred to set her traps in silence and wait for the perfect moment to spring them. She didn't have to wait long for her first opportunity. The Nate factor. The next morning, Claire was at Crimson Lights, stirring honey into her tea when she spotted Nate Hastings at the counter. He was alone, scrolling through his phone while waiting for his order. Claire smiled to herself. Nate was the perfect leverage point: successful, respected, and, most importantly, involved with Audra. Their relationship had been rocky enough already. One well-placed truth could send it crashing down. "Morning, Nate," Claire greeted warmly, sliding into the seat across from him before he could object. He looked up, surprised but polite. "Claire, haven't seen you around much lately. How are you holding up?" "I've been better," she admitted with a sigh, letting just the right amount of vulnerability show. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Something personal. And it involves Audra." That got his attention. His posture stiffened, and he set his phone down. "What about Audra?" Claire leaned in slightly. "I don't want to cause trouble, but you should know, she's been going out of her way to get between me and Kyle. And it's not just words, Nate. She was with him in France, in a way that's not exactly professional." Nate's expression darkened. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying I have no reason to lie to you," Claire interrupted gently. "Ask her yourself. See if she gives you a straight answer." She let the silence hang for a moment before taking a sip of her tea and standing. "Just be careful, Nate. I think she's playing both sides." She didn't need to say more. The seed was planted. Kyle versus Audra, round 1. Meanwhile, Kyle wasn't wasting time either. He cornered Audra later that day in the Newman Media offices, shutting the door behind him before she could deliver one of her smug greetings. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked, his tone dripping with accusation. Audra smirked. "If you're talking about the chaos between you and Claire, then yes, a little. You're easy to wind up, Kyle." His eyes narrowed. "You went out of your way to tell her about France. You knew exactly how she'd react." "That's because I know you," she replied smoothly, leaning back in her chair. "You can't help but fall into old habits, and Claire deserves to know what kind of man she's dealing with." Kyle stepped closer, his voice low but dangerous. "You want to play games? Fine. But you've made one mistake: you underestimated how far I'll go to protect what's mine." Audra raised an eyebrow. "And what's that? Your reputation? Or Claire?" "Both," he snapped. "Stay out of our relationship, Audra. This is your only warning." But Audra just smiled like she'd already won. Claire's quiet revenge. Claire wasn't idle while Kyle and Audra faced off. She'd decided the best way to dismantle Audra's hold was to attack her credibility from every angle. If Nate started doubting her loyalty, and Newman Media began questioning her decisions, Audra's confidence would crack, and with it, her power. That afternoon, Claire paid a visit to Victoria Newman under the guise of offering condolences for Cole's passing. During their conversation, She casually brought up the unfortunate tension between Audra and Kyle. She phrased it carefully, suggesting that maybe Audra's personal involvement with certain employees was blurring professional lines. Victoria didn't react outwardly, but Claire could see the gears turning. If there was one thing Victoria hated, it was unnecessary drama in her business. By the time Claire left Newman Enterprises, she'd sown doubts in both Nate's personal life and Audra's professional standing. The dinner that goes wrong. 2 nights later, Nate invited Audra to dinner. She arrived expecting a romantic evening, but the moment she sat down, she knew something was off. Nate's usual warmth was replaced by cool detachment. So, he began over a glass of wine. How was France? Audra blinked, momentarily caught off guard. France? Why? I heard you spent some time with Kyle, Nate interrupted, his voice even but sharp. Care to explain? Audra's eyes narrowed. Let me guess, Claire told you that. She told me enough to make me wonder if I'm wasting my time, Nate replied. So go ahead. Clear it up. Audra forced a laugh. It was nothing. We ended up in the same sleeping car. We talked. We kissed once. It didn't mean anything. Nate's expression didn't soften. Funny how nothing keeps happening between you and Kyle. The rest of the dinner was tense, and by the end of it, Nate left without walking her to her car. Audra knew she had a problem, and that problem's name was Claire Newman. Kyle's desperation. Back at the Abbott mansion, Kyle was pacing the living room, replaying the fight with Claire over and over. He'd tried calling her several times, but each attempt went to voicemail. He left messages, each one sounding a little more desperate than the last. When she finally texted him back, it wasn't what he wanted to hear. I need space. Don't call me for a few days. Kyle tossed his phone onto the couch, running both hands through his hair. He wasn't good at waiting, especially when it came to relationships. The thought of Claire slipping further away from him made his chest tighten. He decided he'd give her 2 days, no more. Audra strikes back. Audra wasn't about to let Claire keep the upper hand. The morning after her disastrous dinner with Nate, she showed up at Crimson Lights where she knew Claire would be. You think you're clever, don't you? Audra said as she slid into the seat across from Claire without asking. Claire didn't even look up from her laptop. I don't think it. I know it. Audra's smile was icy. You can mess with my personal life all you want, but don't forget, I still know things about Kyle that you don't. If I really wanted to, I could make sure you never look at him the same way again. Claire finally closed her laptop and met Audra's gaze. And if you think that scares me, you're underestimating me. Again. They stared each other down, the air between them charged with silent threats. The boiling point. 3 days later, fate, or maybe Genoa City's tendency for dramatic timing, put all 4 players in the same place at once. Victoria had called an impromptu meeting at Newman Media to discuss a potential partnership. Nate, Audra, Kyle, and Claire were all in the conference room when the conversation veered unexpectedly. Victoria, never one to mince words, looked directly at Audra. I've been hearing whispers about tensions between you and Kyle. Personal tensions that might be affecting the business. Is there something I should know? Audra's eyes flicked to Claire, who was sitting calmly at the other end of the table. Kyle's jaw tightened. There's nothing affecting the business, Audra said finally, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. Claire smiled faintly, knowing the cracks were starting to show. What's next? By the end of the week, the damage was undeniable. Nate had grown distant from Audra, Victoria was keeping a closer eye on her work, and Kyle was more determined than ever to win Claire back, if only to prove to her, and himself, that Audra's hold was broken for good. But in Genoa City, nothing stays buried for long. And if Audra decided to go scorched earth, she still had one last card to play, one that could blow up not just Claire's trust, but Kyle's entire standing with the Abbott family. For now, though, Claire had the upper hand. And she intended to keep it, even if it meant going to war.